I'm Air Chief Marshal Angus Houston, and I'm the Chair of Airservices Board.
David Marchant, a Board Member and the Chair of the Technology and Investment Committee of the Board.
Tim Rothwell, Board Member and Chair of the Board Audit and Risk Committee.
Oh, thank you for that. Now, Sir Angus, do you or any of your board members want to make an opening statement?
I have an opening statement which is about 10 minutes, if that's all right
fine.
with the committee.
We're in your hands. Sorry. We're just arranging some pairs so that if the bells go, we won't abandon you. So, Sir Angus.
Okay. Chair, Senator, thank you very much for the opportunity to make an opening statement. At the outset, let me state without equivocation, the Airservices Board accepted the findings of the ANAO in its report of April 2017, including that the conduct of the cost-risk analysis by the Tender Evaluation Committee during Phase 3 of the evaluation was not adequately recorded. This led to the conclusion that the analysis was not conducted in a robust and transparent manner. The Airservices Board also accepted the ANAO finding on the management of conflict of interest issues, and I quote from the report, "The evaluation governance arrangements were appropriate." Furthermore, the report went on to say that the governance arrangements, and I quote, "also guard against the conflict of interest issues identified in the ANAO report number 1, 2016-2017, impacting on the tender evaluation process and outcome." I will now address the findings on the cost risk analysis conducted by the Tender Evaluation Committee during the evaluation process. Accepting that the conduct of the cost risk analysis was not adequately recorded, the Airservices Board undertook action to verify that the evaluation was undertaken in a professional, competent and unprejudiced manner. The Airservices Board engaged Clayton Utz solicitors to interview each of the participants of the Tender Evaluation Committee Phase 3 workshop. This was to gauge from each of the participants that, firstly, the cost risk process was undertaken in accordance with the criteria for the evaluation. Secondly, that it reflected the collective professional judgment of the participants. And thirdly, that no participant exerted undue influence upon the assessment, and that the final assessments were in accordance with their consensus view. Of the 29 participants of the Tender Evaluation Committee Phase 3 workshop, Clayton Utz have been able to contact 25 of them and verify that 20 of those that were contacted were directly involved in the cost risk analysis section of the workshop. They were also asked to verify that the process had been undertaken in accordance with the guidelines and its outcome reflected the professional judgment of the evaluators and that no undue influence arose from any participant. The Clayton Utz report states that interviewees involved in the cost risk analysis section of the workshop confirmed that, firstly, the methodology set out in Schedule 5 is an accurate description of what occurred during the risk adjustment process. Whilst the methodology does not appear to have been written down in a formal sense at the time, participants were clearly aware of the purpose, requirements and approach described in the methodology at the time the risk adjustment process was undertaken. Secondly, the methodology was applied consistently for each tenderer. Thirdly, no person participating in the risk adjustment process appeared to exercise any actual undue bias towards or against any particular tenderer. And lastly, the risk adjustment process was conducted fairly, and the results were the output of the collective views and professional judgment of those who participated. As well, at the board's request, Allen Linklater Solicitors undertook a review in late 2015, but of a smaller number of evaluators, and it had provided a similar outcome and advice. Most importantly, the Tender Evaluation Board, which includes the Airservices CEO but does not include any other Airservices board member, was, as stated in the ANAO report, responsible for making a recommendation as to the preferred tenderer proceeding to Phase 5 contract negotiation. Furthermore, all the evaluation recommendations from the cost risk analysis were unanimously endorsed by not only the Tender Evaluation Committee, but also the overseeing Tender Evaluation Board, which had governance and decision-making responsibility for reviewing and approving or rejecting any Tender Evaluation Committee recommendations at the conclusion of each evaluation phase. Senators, the Airservices Board is cognizant of the 1997 court decision in Hughes versus Airservices case, which made it clear that the tender process cannot be circumvented or prejudiced by the Airservices Board intervening in the evaluation process itself. The Tender Evaluation Board, comprising senior air services and defence staff, was therefore established as the independent entity responsible for the evaluation process and is quite separate from the Airservices Board. The arrangements with Defence provide that Airservices will, as lead agency, enter into the acquisition and support contracts with a successful tenderer. The Airservices Board, as financial delegate, is responsible for approving Airservices' entry into the project contracts with the successful tenderer. And I emphasise this at the conclusion of the evaluation process. The Board has undertaken the due diligence and governance oversight necessary to satisfy itself that the tender evaluation process was undertaken methodically and applied consistently across all tenderers, has not been unduly influenced by any participant, was undertaken by competent persons using their professional judgment, and the outcome reflected the judgment of the group, and selected the supplier with the best technical, operational and safety capabilities. This due diligence involved engaging Clayton Utz, an independent advisor, to look behind the documentation and engage with the participants themselves to verify that the evaluation and its outcomes reflected the expert and unprejudiced opinion of the participants. Based on this deeper review, the Airservices Board remains satisfied that the preferred tenderer is the supplier with the best technical, operational and safety capabilities, as was recommended by the Tender Evaluation Board. In this market, it is important to appreciate that there are only a very small number of suppliers capable of delivering and integrating the components of a system that meets our national requirements. Air traffic control systems are not an off-the-shelf product. Each system must cater for a nation's differing airspace coverage requirements, differing number of interfaces, the number of facilities, as well as the specific requirements of the local aviation industry. These differences create complexities that mean all air traffic control systems need to be configured and tailored to address not only the complexities, but also the peculiarities of the actual area to be covered. Every system is unique. The One Sky system, when commissioned, will facilitate air traffic control for 11% of the world's surface for both civilian and military aircraft movements, and will be the world's most advanced air traffic control system. Consequently, the procurement process was inherently constrained and complex from both an operational and commercial perspective. This is consistent with the experience of other air navigation service providers internationally who have faced significant challenges in procuring future ATM systems on appropriate commercial terms. For example, it is well known and on the public record, the United States Federal Aviation Administration has had a modernisation program to replace its outdated air traffic control automation systems, which is over 10 minutes late. 10 years, sorry, it's over 10 years late. And at nearly $7 billion and still going, is more than 100% over budget. The Airservices Board and Management, the Tender Evaluation Board, and the Tender Evaluation Committee have throughout the tender process all been cognizant of the significant issues experienced in the United States and other jurisdictions. Therefore, the need to ensure the certainty of the required technical capability and scope was of the utmost importance. To the Airservices Board, this was critical. To that end, and to ensure we achieve value for money, Airservices has not yet proceeded to final contract. We have proceeded under advanced work orders with a detailed scope and technical requirements definition and specification process with the preferred supplier. Airservices has delayed the execution of the acquisition and support contracts until later this year to significantly lower these risks to Airservices. This process enables the acquisition price to be more prudently determined and the business case to be updated. This, with the Accelerate program, enables the One Sky program to be delivered to our customers with no real increase in prices in accordance with our latest corporate plan. Indeed, with the work undertaken, there may be opportunities to decrease prices. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to make this opening statement, and for the record, I request the statement is tabled. I also tabled the reports from Clayton Utz and Alance Linklater. My colleagues, Mr David Marchant, Chair of the Board Technology and Investment Committee, and Mr Tim Rothwell, Chair of the Board Audit and Risk Committee, and I are happy to take your questions. And I have the three documents for tabling here.
Thank you, Sir Angus. No objection to tabling documents. There'll be no objection. So tabled.